Been a while. Been a little while, at least a couple months since I've made a video or even discussed anything. But man, I might have said it before in other videos. Sometimes I feel like I don't have a whole lot to contribute to the discussion uh, that's not already just kind of already out there presented and brothers that have done it way better and more consistent than I ever could. In any kind of way. And I mean that in my eschatological conversations, where I'm at, and so on and so forth. So, as I said, there's plenty of other brothers out there that know how to do it, and you're going to learn a lot more from than me. But if you're still here and you're entertained to this point of maybe curious of where I'm going with this, or you're curious with the title, we're going to kind of get into that. Um, but since it's been a couple months since I've made a video, a lot has happened. A lot. We had an incident with Mr. Charlie Kirk a few weeks ago. A devastating situation that has certainly brought a good voice for Christians, for the church out with the incident that happened to him. The other day, I believe on the 25th, we lost Brother Body Bacham. I've learned a lot from that brother. And I hate to see him go. He is certainly one of the giants of the faith, for at least in our generation. And I hope the Lord rises more up like him. It's pretty interesting of losing some of the giants in the faith that we have lately. And not necessarily a giant in the faith, but also lost my mother. I lost my mom on September 15th. 2025, and just in case you're seeing this video later on, we lost her to cancer. She had a skin cancer, and she finally left us to be with the Lord, September 15th. It's been kind of rough to deal with. I've lost both my mom and my dad now to cancer. It's a scary thing. It's horrible thing, especially for a child as myself to watch my parents deal with that, to go through those things. But I'm confident she's present with the Lord, and it's been a lot, and it's been really weird, and I've never wanted to call her more than ever now, and just talk to her, just about whatever, my dog or how life's going, or checking in on the kids, and it's just been kind of it's different, but that's not the context of my video whatsoever. Just kind of figured I'd give a couple month rundown on a few things that's gone on. So, what I actually want to discuss, and as I said a minute ago, it's hard for me to put my thoughts out on words, out into the at least into the video world here, and so I'm gonna try to do it. So any of y'all that have been following me or know me from X, that's where you're gonna find the most conversations with me. If you don't know me from there yet, let me click over here, and then I'll switch my screen. And then this is where you can find me over on X, formerly known as Twitter. I am the American Pirate over there. My name is Steve. Not many people will obviously call me that by any means, at least into this social world here. But on that aspect, that's where you're going to find the most conversations with me. If you want to leave a comment or anything like that here, I will see it. I will respond. I will, as soon as I can, as soon as I see it. I try to be very community. I try to chat with people that are willing to engage with me, even though there's plenty that won't engage with me because I'm a full preterist. There's still plenty of brothers and sisters that I've met being in this camp now, where I'm at in my eschatology, that are very welcoming. I've lost plenty of people, believe that, but I've also gained a lot, and I'm very appreciative. I thank God for. But what I want to chit chat a little bit is I've made videos about it before, and especially this is the time text. And it's the time statements in Scripture that really shifted me from where I used to be, several years ago into my dispensational world, pre-trib rapture ordeal to slowly working my way into more of understanding it in an all-male view, and then I shifted over into my post-millennial partial preterist view, which I was like 95% preterist at that point. And then I finally made the leap over to full preterism, and I understand that some people are like, and I get called heretic, not as much as often anymore. I get not engaged with enough to be called heretic every day. But I've had plenty of people say abandoning the faith, heretic, unorthodox, such and such. But that's whatever, because I'm convinced by the scripture themselves. And that's what I rely upon is sola scriptura, and I say that almost in a total scriptura instances. I don't need to leave the text and then find traditions here or creeds or whatever the case is. So they call people like me and my brothers and sisters, hyper preterist. Well, kind of in the same, right back at them as they're hypocretalist. The creeds are exalted. They are the final statement upon the word. Conversating with people, I've noticed that they have to abandon the word and then go into an orthodox creedal position to basically be their final strike of a hammer when engaging with me. But I don't have to leave the text, and I think that's beautiful. And the more I've started to understand the position that I'm in, the better the harmony of all the passages become. Everything flows together in such a way, and it locks together the consistency and the patterns in Scripture that it's just remarkable. And I'm grown more in my faith in my full preterist position. It's strengthened my faith. It's done a lot. It's got me digging really into the Word a lot to try to figure out what's going on. Am I wrong? It's still one of my prayers. If I'm into an area of like I don't need to be, I pray the Lord to bring me out. Show me ways out of it and such. Just the same way I came out of from my dispensational days to where I am now. Asking the Lord to show me these things, to lead me, to guide me, to protect me, and understanding these things, because I understand I'm flawed and I'm fallible as a human being, and even as a child of His, I'm still fallible in my flesh. And I'm not using it as a confirmation or anything, but at the same time, asking those things, and I believe that the Lord does when we seek answers, and He's only strengthened my understanding, and I'm more convinced every time I study a topic or on this topic than when I first started. I'm not saying that's like a confirmation, kind of thing, but it's warming. It's understandable. It's a lot of things. There's a lot that comes with eschatology, and the covenant eschatology or the gospel eschatology, however you want to see it. Full preterist, if you want to use that name, I don't think it's the best name in the world, but most people just kind of understand the label. People that say hyper preterist, well, they're just trying to muddy the water before the conversation. But if I could, real quick, man, I want to kind of get over to Daniel 9, and I'll click over here and hopefully you can see it. Now, as a partial preterist, these texts I didn't have issues with, but what I did have an issue with was the changing of kind of how I seen things, and then looking at the text just a little bit closer, that kind of shifted me, shifting me from partial preterist to a full. Hopefully you can see this with my big old head in the way there. But 24 through 27, and these things it speaks about this Messiah coming, Him making a covenant, this tribulation that's going to be coming, basically is what he's referring to here, because he talks about the abomination of desolation that will come. And we don't really understand what this is yet in the book of Daniel until we get into the New Testament, where Jesus just refers to these things and what we know as the Olivet Discourses, where he starts to talk about these sorts of things that were going on. But these are interesting things to me, guys, and it's something to just think about, okay? Just think about it for a second, all right? And let's look at Daniel 9:24 for a moment. It says 70 weeks have been decreed for your people and your holy city. So who's the people here, and who is the holy city? Where is the holy city? Well, he's talking to Daniel, so whom is he talking about? Your people. So he's talking about the Israelites. That's whom he's talking about, in your holy city. So he's talking about Israel, Jerusalem, to finish transgression. Okay, to finish, that's a completion word, okay? To finish transgression, to make an end of sin, to make atonement for iniquity, to bring in everlasting righteousness. And hear this one right here, all right? To seal up vision and prophecy, and to anoint the most holy place. So Daniel is given this prophecy about something that's going to come to pass. And we know that it's like 6 centuries later that this comes to pass. And when it does, this will be the sealing up of the prophecy. It is making an atonement for our iniquities. He is bringing an everlasting righteousness. We have this in Christ, everlasting righteousness, an atonement for us. He puts an end to sacrifices because there is no more sacrifices. We have one final sacrifice, which is in Christ. And he talks about this Messiah that's going to come. Now, where I tend to push at the foundation of dispensationalism is just that, at the foundation, okay? So what they like to do is stick a gap in between the 69th and the 70th week and stick that into our future and call it a 7-year tribulation, is that they would see the book of Revelation as a future event. At least chapters 4 through 19, I believe, is how they're going to see this. And then the coming of the Messiah on a physical city coming down, and so on and so forth, from Revelation 20 through 21. But, okay, what I mean by that is saying, okay, after 62 weeks, the Messiah will be cut off and have nothing, and the people of the prince who is to come will destroy the city and sanctuary, and its end will come with a flood. Even to the end there will be war. Desolations are determined. Okay. So back in 25, we see that this decree will go to restore Jerusalem, because remember, there's not a temple here in Daniel's day. So this is not a future temple to us. It was a future temple at that point. This temple has already came, and this is the same one that was described. The one that's going to come from Daniel's perspective is the same one that Jesus says is going to be destroyed in his generation. So we have this decree about this temple that's coming, so the sacrifice is coming, so on and so forth. But this is the thing, okay? The Messiah, the Prince, there will be 7 weeks and 62 weeks. It will be built again with the plaza and mount and even times of distress. So we have a Messiah, all right, the Prince, okay, Messiah, the Prince. That's his 2 names that he's been given in this, Messiah and Prince. Who are we speaking about here? Who is the Messiah? That would be Jesus. Who is the Prince? Well, the Prince is the same person to refer back to as the Messiah. So we have Messiah and Prince. So in the very next verse, when he refers to the Messiah being cut off in verse 26 and have nothing, and the people of the who? The Prince. So the Prince is whom? Look back to verse 25. Messiah, Prince. Both are referring to Christ, as this is Jesus. So to change the idea, and this is where dispensationalism, I believe, attacks on a blasphemous foundation, is because it refers to the Messiah, but then the people have nothing, and the people of the Prince who is to come, the same the Messiah that was in to come, the Prince, Jesus, will come and destroy the city and the sanctuary. So this is God, this is Christ, which we know later on, this is the Messiah coming to bring judgment on Israel for her adultery, or adulterous behavior, being with other gods, so on and so forth. This was prophesied back in Ezekiel. This is in Ezekiel, Jeremiah, and ultimately back in Deuteronomy. Moses spoke of this, that it was going to come, a perverse generation, and Peter hits that in the book of Acts. But nonetheless, they changed to say, well, this Messiah will come, but this prince, is the Antichrist who will come and make a covenant. But there's no covenant anywhere being made in the New Testament whatsoever except Jesus. He's the only one. The book of Revelation never uses the idea of a prince, of an Antichrist coming and making a covenant with many or anything along them lines. No prince there as in that aspect of saying, a Antichrist. The beast is not referred to in that way of making any type of covenant. Even if you want to talk about the mark of the beast, so on and so forth, that's not a covenant that's being made. That's just like something that he's doing. That's not a covenant. But nonetheless, so we have these things, these time statements on these things that were going to happen. Jesus refers to these ideas back in Matthew 20, or a future Matthew 24 in the Olivet Discourse. He references places in Daniel when he talks about himself being the Son of Man, so like Daniel 7. And what a big one is, and this is a huge one, guys, and if I could just kind of pick off that for a minute. It's abomination of desolation. It's coming. We know that this is the Romans that are going to come. We know this later on in the book of Luke. It's very obvious from the Olivet Discourse. But if I can continue for a second. This chapter right here, and I'm going to leave a guy in the description of a video in the description. I encourage you to go watch it. He's going to explain this chapter so much better than I ever could. But this chapter really did a number for me. And it was one of those that I had to sit back and be like, Lord, I don't know what to do with this. I don't, because it makes it abundantly clear. And brothers like Ken Gentry, Jeff, Doug, it doesn't matter, James, whoever, try to pick it in ways, but then, use the harmony of how it's being used, but then try to say, well, we have the spiritual here, but we have this physical here. That's a different kind of conversation with them guys. But if I could real quick on verse 1 and 2, okay? Now at that time statement, Michael, the great prince who stands over the sons of your people, will rise, and there will be a time of distress such as never occurred since there was a nation until that time. And at that time, your people, everyone who's found in the book or written in the book, will be rescued. Hold on, okay? Jesus refers to these same types of things when he talks about tribulation is coming. They've never been seen before, nor will there be after this tribulation. No, any scholar, okay, any of the scholars or anyone's going to adhere to be like, yes, this chapter or verse 1 is certainly referring to the Olivet Discourse that Jesus speaks about, that the tribulation that was to come. Now, futurists will take that and stick that into our future. Partial preterists will stick that in our past, but then nitpick at some of the verses later on, like Matthew 24:36 on, or into Matthew 25, as to pick it like, well, but that is a future to us, but this was 70 AD. No, brothers and sisters, this is all at the same time, okay? Because the chapter itself makes it very clear, okay? Now, we have time statements of saying that this destruction is going to come. This is what the tribulation is going to be, okay? Verse 2, many of those who sleep in the dust of the ground will awake to everlasting life, but others to disgrace and everlasting contempt. Hold on, just keep that pinned up right there. Boop, we have a resurrection right there, okay? So that's going to get into later of how you're going to understand that, whether that's going to be covenantal standing with Israel, or that's going to be a physical resurrection. If you'd like to take to the physical resurrection part, the time statements are going to lock it down. There's nothing you can do around those sorts of things. That's going to be the issue. So if you want to hold that this is physical resurrection, then you're forced to stick a physical resurrection. Nonetheless, 70 AD, because we know that 70 AD was a destruction of the temple. Okay? What I want to look at right here, I guess I'll go ahead and look at 7. So Daniel 12:7, and he's talking with this angel, and in verse 7 he says, I heard a man dressed in linen who was above the waters of the river, and he raised his right hand and his left toward toward heaven and swore by him who lives forever that it would be for a time, times, and half a time. And as soon as they finish shattering the power of the holy people, read it, all these events will be completed. Unless you want to go out and say, well, this is a future physical resurrection, this is a future tribulation outside of when it was intended, and then the historical, there's no, it's gone. The temple's gone, okay? I mean, just watch Israel now. They're going to a Wailing Wall, which is like the west outer wall. It's not even a temple. It's like an west outer wall. I think it's west. For 3.5 years, 42 months. That's what they're talking about here. So, the shattering of the holy people. So who is the holy people? Are you willing to go out and say, well, it's no longer this is the holy people, but the church is the holy people? So wait a minute. 3.5 years on the shattering of the holy people? Are you willing to go out and say that's the church? Or well, are we going to look at it as the same holy people as being spoken to by Daniel and what we just discussed in chapter 9? Okay, all of this has been a buildup for him. But what we see, he swore he put his hands and swore by heaven that all of these events will be completed. That's the destruction of the tribulation that was to come and the resurrection. Not a gap in between those of thousands of years. This one and this one. Verse 1, verse 2 are already being completed in this. Okay? And what's super, super interesting about this, and I've discussed this before, is how David in verse 9, I don't know if you can see it, my big old head right here, in verse 9 is told, go your way, Daniel, for these words are concealed and sealed up until the end time. Until the end time. Now, some are going to take, well, that's the end of the world history. Well, it's nowhere consistent with the rest of the New Testament. You won't find that concept at all. You'll find the end of an age, and that's where we're going to start getting into with Matthew 24. All right. Abomination is set up for 1,290 days. How blessed are those who keep waiting. So we have this abomination of desolation is set up. So we have this time of the Gentiles that's going to be perceived. And we're going to kind of get into that more in a second. But he's also told here, but as for you, go your way to the end, then you will enter into rest and rise for your allotted portion at the end of the age. So, let's go here real quick. Is it the end of the cosmos kind of age or anything like that? No. It's not the end of the cosmos or anything. End of age. So we're looking at this in the same thing as when you get into the New Testament and you start getting to the Greek. We're going to see it as aeon. So and I've heard it pronounced a different way, but I'm going with aeon. But I want to kind of look back at one more thing real quick. So we have this conceal this up until the end time, which is funny because when we get into the book of Revelation, John is told not to seal up the words because the time was near. When John's seeing these sorts of things, and even starts the book, Revelation 1, chapter 1, verse 1 and 3, he states that the time was near, or soon and near to about, and even places himself in the tribulation. He said, I'm a brother and fellow partaker in the tribulation. Physically alive. These are things you have to deal with. But we have this swearing that all these events will be completed in verse 7. It's going to be handed over to these Gentiles for this a certain amount of time. So we go see Wicked Will Understand. I heard, what was the one I'm looking for? Time and half a time, and they will finish shattering the holy people, and all these events will be completed. I mean, these are little things you have to look at. The age, the completion. He swore by heaven that these things were going to come about. And then you get into the New Testament, and you're looking at Jesus' words, and the disciples asking him right off the go, hey, bro, what are you talking about? after he's already discussed what was going to happen in chapter 23, and there's no separation of these chapters. It's not like different things. You just read this through from chapter 23 to 24. Remember, we put the chapters in there. Jesus came out of the temple when his disciples come up to him, to pointing at the temple, the buildings to him. So remember, there's no temple in Daniel's day, but there's one that's going to come, and this Messiah would come as well, and then he would send these people to destroy the very thing. They know Daniel. There's no doubt about it. You might have areas like the Sadducees that didn't like the book of Daniel because of resurrection and stuff like that. They didn't believe in an afterlife or physical, or anything like that. In the Sadducees' point, but nonetheless, they knew about the book of Daniel. So even those that didn't discard it, they knew this. Not only this, but you have Ezekiel, especially 27, Isaiah 26. They knew their Tanakh and their Old Testament writings. So when they hear about these things that's going to come, they realize, hey, this is what Daniel spoke about right here. This is it. He's talking about destroying this temple. So we know that this destruction was going to come, the resurrection or the restoration of Israel, which is the restoring or rising up out of its sleep back into the presence of God, Daniel 12:2, would come to pass. And they knew that it was going to happen when? At the end of the age. That's why they're asking this question. They tie the destruction of the temple with the end of the age. It's not like they're like, hey, this here and then the end of the age later on. That's not what they're asking. It's almost like a two-part question. Two parts to one question, but being two questions, if that kind of makes sense. And there's no way around it. When you get into Matthew 24, and I've discussed this before in other chapters or other videos, but therefore, when you see the abomination of desolation, which was spoken of through Daniel the prophet, standing in the holy place, let the reader understand. Those that are in Judea flee to the mountains. So not only is it saying, hey, you remember what we was talking about, book of Daniel? And now, do you remember Daniel, where he said all these things will be completed and sealed up? All prophecy will be sealed up. Remember these things that Daniel spoke about. He's alluding back to Daniel when he refers to himself as Son of Man, things like this. That's even why they wanted to try to, when they accused him of blasphemy, when he said that he is the Son of Man, you will see him coming in the clouds. This is something that only God does, and Jesus is putting himself first person, as in saying, hey, I'm the Son of Man. But nonetheless, local judgment, not world judgment, because why could you flee? He tells them in verse 16, then those that are in Judea flee to the mountains. Whoever's in a housetop must go down, and these things must not go down to get their things that are in the house. It's going to come. It's coming fast. You got to go. You got to leave. Don't even turn back, because destruction is coming upon this place, this city, this temple, and these things are going to come to pass, and they're going to come to pass at when? The end of the age, okay? And you can't get around this, and many futurists do, and dispensationalists like to say, well, generation means the race of Jews. No, that's not at all what it means, so they can just hush that up by all means. But we get into the gathering, the trumpet, send out his angels with a great trumpet, who will gather together, and I want you to keep your eye on that thought, as his angels and great trumpet. Will gather as elect from the four winds. Now, post-millennial partial preterists will be like, well, we're still gathering. The church is being gathered. New believers, such and such, are coming to Christ, so on and so forth. But it still doesn't fit to say that, because you're like, well, I'm stretching that over 2,000 years of time. But Jesus doesn't allow that. He states it in verse 34 when he says, this generation will not pass away until all these things take place. So just like Daniel is being told that all these things will be completed, the sealing up of prophecy, such and such, all these things will take place in this distinct generation. Sorry, I had to answer my door for my son. So, but nonetheless, we see all these things being wrapped up at this point, again, to the end of the age, end of a generation, such and such, that Jesus is making very clear. So if you're like, all right, well, the abomination, desolation, it's an antichrist, it's this, that, and the other. No, the abomination that is brought on brings desolation. And however you want to see that, I would like to pick explicitly to Nero, But however you want to go about that doesn't matter, because the time statements still restrict you to a certain point that you can't get out of, guys. Um, Nonetheless, and you see this kind of thing when we look over in Luke 21, okay, 21:20. But when you see Jerusalem surrounded by armies, then recognize that her desolation is near. This is the same desolation that's being brought on, and this is the same type of what we talk about, the Gentiles coming trampling on the holy city for, wait a minute, how long? When was this going to happen? What was this prophesied about? For 42 months that this was going to come to pass? So, let's forever have time to the finishing, shattering the holy people. All these events will be completed. So Jesus is clearly tying with Daniel, just saying, hey, this is what this is. Daniel didn't know what it was yet, but he knew that it was going to be destruction, the end of the age, the resurrection, all these things. The angel swears by heaven to say all these things are going to be completed. Jesus states that all these things are going to happen within his generation. It's a lot to add up, guys. Like, these things are going to start getting very, very consistent. This is something else too, is into a Revelation 11:1. There was given to me a measuring rod like a staff, and someone said, get up and measure the temple of God and the altar and those who worship in it. Leave the court which is outside the temple. Do not measure it, for it has been given to the nations, and they will tread over the holy city for 42 months. Whoa, this is tying into the same exact thing that Daniel spoke of. This is what's going to happen. Remember, guys, remember real quick, if we go back and I mean, just so you know what I'm not fibbing you here. Remember the entire context of what John is talking about here. Would these things that must, verse 1, soon take place. Verse 3, the time is near. Not time for me and you, guys. Time near to John. And not only to John, but to the 7 churches in Asia, whom he was writing this to. These churches, he wanted them to know and told them to stay diligent. This is about to come. These are what's happening. Let me tell you about it. And they're going to understand it. And then John has used imagery from all over the Bible to paint the symbolic imagery that he's being seen and what he's got to relate to these churches. Very, very interesting how, but the time text they just restrain everything. They really do. And it's not always in saying, all right, well, the time text is saying, well, we could use, I mean, if you look in the book of Revelation itself, you're going to find numbers of like horses and people and stuff that's just like, that's not, that there's no way, there's no probable way. So sometimes it is almost in a symbolic way. I'll grant you that. Not everything has to be absolutely literal on the sense of saying, well, this exact number here or this exact number, because we get into the book of Revelation and we got the later on in chapter 20, we got the 1,000 years. So you're like, what do you do with that? Yada, yada, yada. But not everything has to be seen in that kind of aspect. But when we have what's being relayed to people, so if I send you a text message, I'm like, hey, bro, I'll be there soon. I'm real close. I'm real near. What are you gonna think? I'll be there soon. Go ahead and grab your bags. I'm giving you indication that I'm going to be there in just a minute. So you're anticipating or taking heed to what I'm saying. So you're going to go ahead and grab your bag and be ready for me to honk the horn or knock on the door, whatever the case is, to scoop you up. That's exact tone that John is doing as well. But if we get back into chapter 11, we see things that are super, super interesting here. What am I looking for? This is what kind of got me. This one with, and I'm not getting into 1 Corinthians 15 today, or 1 Thessalonians 4, but this is going to be something as well. Okay, you remember what we just discussed in Matthew 24? There was going to be a trumpet So he will set forth his trumpet, or his angels to the great trumpet, and gather together his elect from the four winds. So he's doing this gathering that's being brought about, this trumpet. We know in 1 Corinthians 7 or 15 that he states about the last trumpet. Well, guess which one's the last trumpet in the book of Revelation? The seventh trumpet in Revelation. So when the seventh angel sounded, and there was loud voice in heaven saying, the kingdom of the world has become the kingdom of our Lord and of his Christ, and he will reign forever. 24 elders who sat on their thrones fell on their face to worship God, saying, we give thanks, O Lord Almighty. Who are you? Or because you have been taken your great power and begun to reign. And the nations were enraged. Your wrath came, and the time came for the dead to be judged, and the time to reward your bondservants, the prophets and the saints who fear your name, the small and great, and to destroy those who destroy the earth. Prophets, saints being rewarded. Wait a minute. Remember that? You remember back in Daniel 12, verse 13? Who's going to receive their allotted portion? At the end of what? The end of the age. The same end of the age that has come, because it has become the time. Your wrath came, and the time to be judged. 24 elders. To reward your bondservants. Daniel, whom is a prophet, saint, those who fear your name, small and great, and destroy those two. So he's bringing redemption and destruction. It's exactly what he said he was going to do. Exactly what he said that he was going to do. Redemption and judgment, also known as the destruction that's going to come about. Daniel 12:1, 12:2. And the temple of God was heaven and open, and the ark of the covenant appeared in his temple, and there was flashes of lightning and sounds and pearls and thunder and earthquakes and a great hailstorm. These are just tying completely into what Jesus said that was going to happen. All of these sorts of things fall right into place. This gathering, we have this gathering that is coming about, that's bringing all of his servants, his bond servants, everyone together, that's going to receive their allotted portion. This is what Jesus says, that he would send out his angels to gather his elect. At this trumpet, this great trumpet, the seventh trumpet that's going on here, and and this isn't a separate one that's going on in the book, or later in chapter 20, we see the same thing, a recapitulation of what's going on. This was common, very, very common thing that not only the prophets did, but Jesus himself did. He would tell, especially parables, ways he would say it, and then he would say the same thing again, but in a different parable, but it's the same thing that he's pointing to. John's doing the same exact thing. He's giving ways on things that's going to happen over and over and over, in different views and different ways of saying it over and over and over, putting it all together. So these things start to get really interesting. I mean, they really, really, really do. They start to get very interesting, and some people just like to dismiss it. And this is just my challenge, bro. If you want to dismiss it and be like, Steve's just a heretic, he don't know what he's talking about. Well, hey, deal with the text. Okay, no matter what you want to think about me is irrelevant to me. It really is. I want you to deal with the time statements in a consistent way. And place them into our future or present or whatever the case is, and show it, exegete. Do your homework. Show the homework. Show it. Because what I see already is, and I've just been a full preterist, not 6 months, something like that, give or take, and I can already see that majority of the time when we bring this stuff up, it's crickets. It is complete crickets. It's silence. We don't get any more from anyone else. They run, they block, they name call, they just refer back to the creeds and so on and so forth. We're unorthodox. Well, if being consistent makes me unorthodox according to man, well, I want to be consistent. I want to be very inconsistent if that's the case when it comes to the orthodox view. I don't care about being orthodox. I care about exalting God's word for what it says, believing in what it says, and exalting him from not only what he was promised going to do, but what he actually did, and that he is the Messiah, the high priest that has died for me. And when I place my faith in him, all of my sins are atoned for or allotted for. My portion will become when I give up my life here, and I will be glorified with him because of what he has done and his righteousness that is upon me on the basis of that faith. I don't need my physical body to be complete. I'm not going to be there just waiting to around when can I get my physical body back so I can be whole again. I will be whole in the full presence of Christ when I give up my breath and my dust or my body returns back to the earth from which it was risen, and my spirit is given back to him in which whom created it. That is a blessed hope when I have a Messiah that not only feels my temptation, understands everything that's going on, but has paid the penalty for what I absolutely deserve, and then I will be made complete with him, without a shadow of a doubt. These are ideas to think about the time text, but I think that they're irrefutable when it boils down to it. And if you've made it this long and you feel like you want to call me anything, that's cool. Drop it down in the comments. If you want to find me over on X, we can discuss more things. Awesome people on there to kind of get answers. If you don't want to, you're just skeptical about everything, but you just kind of want to understand the position that we're kind of in here and why we're doing this. Well, and you want some more details, feel free. Message me on X. If you have questions about a certain video or something that you want me to do, cool. Shout, let me know. And I'm going to try to bring a few brothers on and a few podcast kind of feels where we kind of do a question. Maybe I'll play like a little devil's advocate on certain things to kind of draw questions out, conversations and ideas for a good edifying dialogue with others. So if you got anything out of this, man, give me a like, give me a sub if you want to. If not, man, it's cool as well. So I appreciate y'all, and I will catch y'all in the next video.